So now that you know how to play the new game, BattleCON, we're going to tell you what we thought of the review copy. As always, good. If it's even, I will be talking about how much I love BattleCON. And if it is odd, Patrick will be talking about how much he loves it, and I'll tell you how much I hate it, really.
All right. Let's see what we roll here.
It's an odd, so it's 1. So, Patrick, you're pro, and I'm con.
All right.
Con for BattleCON.
Well, to kick it off, I would say that one of my favorite things about this game is that it is completely luckless. There, you have your whole deck in your hand. There's no drawing cards mechanic. You choose which cards you start your discard pile. It's not random. There's no player who goes first because you both resolve simultaneously. And in that way, there's not a whole lot of luck. There's not any really luck that goes into the game. But at the same time, it doesn't fall into a common pitfall that very luckless games have, in that it's not very deterministic. Because what skill there is in the game revolves around how your opponent's going to move, how your opponent's cards works, predicting how he's going to play. So even if the game doesn't have much a random element to it, it still has a lot of variation and a lot of if not, I guess replayability isn't the term that I'm going for here. I guess what I mean more is that you can't.
You still get that sense of drama.
Yeah,
you still get the sense of drama because I think you have different characters,
right?
So there's still a lot of back and forth. It doesn't feel stale at all.
You can't just predict the outcome 3 turns in.
Right. However, the rule book is not very clear. While the game is luckless, it's kind of muddled in terms of how to play. Hopefully, the designers will take a look at the rulebook and think about revising it before it is actually released, because we had a very difficult time. I think actually the 2-player rules were pretty good. There were a few things we wanted to see in the FAQs that weren't, but they can always put those in, at a later date on the website. I think the bigger problem was in the other variations. Besides a one-on-one deathmatch, there's also a 4-player game. There is a tag team variant where we have 4 players, but only 2 characters on the board fighting at a time. And these variations were just not well explained at all. I think they were reasonably well thought out, but they just could not seem to cover basic issues with them that we were kind of baffled over. And so hopefully they'll clear some of these things up in the final release, because it was definitely a barrier for us.
That said, one other thing that's really great about this game is how unique it feels. Like I mentioned earlier, though it has the same sort of theme as Yomi, it is very different in how it's played. And I think you can see that from the tutorial as well. The way you play attacks is very interesting. The whole thing where you put together a base and a style card is interesting. Each character may have different things you can ante, which change the style of that character. The cooldown system works really cool with the separate discard piles, so you can sort of time your effects, and you can't just recycle them immediately. All in all, the game feels very different from any other kind of game I've played, and I think that contributes to a very fun experience.
Yeah, I agree the mechanics are nice, but a little bit too much emphasis on priority, actually. I felt when I played that it was often not a matter of trying to outwit my opponent or outmaneuver him, so much as just trying to get faster. Because of the way the stun is built in, there's not necessarily a stun effect on cards. It's just that if you hit them before they hit you and they don't have a defense, you stun them. That's very powerful. That can swing a game very quickly. And so because that's built in, I think priority becomes too important. And often I find myself doing nothing but trying to play around priority. Conversely, there are games where priority doesn't matter at all. For instance, there's a character, Cadenza, who is a very slow Iron Knight character. And he is never going to go first. His styles almost all give him 0 or negative priority. He's always going to be going after the opponent, but he has a high amount of stun guard. So in those matchups, it really is irrelevant, but in others, it's completely game-breaking. I just felt like it dominated a little bit too much. It took some of the strategy out from other elements.
Right. So the priority may be emphasized a little bit too much. One last thing that is really great about this game is the variety in characters. The game comes with, as we mentioned, 12 characters. Each one of the characters has its own theme to it. They all feel pretty distinct. And each one of the characters, more importantly, has a mechanic that goes with that theme. They all feel like their own character, and they feel different from the others. The one I use a demo with has a sort of theme of an elemental fighter, and each one of his tokens goes with a different element, has a different effect on it, and he has moves that take those tokens back and allow you to essentially recycle through these elements to augment your attacks. There's a guy who uses, who each of his tokens are sort of like bullets, and all of his attacks are long range and use and he was like, it feels like you're playing a gunner. And the way these characters all are different, and the way they all interact, I think, is what makes this game so replayable and so interesting.
However, there are, I think, two problems actually with the differences between the characters. First, while the characters are very unique, one problem I see is that often, while they seem so far, although I haven't played enough to say, balanced to each other, often the decks won't be balanced within themselves. In other words, because of the cooldown mechanic, I very often find myself trying to recycle one move or one move combo as frequently as possible. As soon as it comes off cooldown, I'm going to drop it because it's so much more powerful than other moves he has. And I'm just trying to get it through the cooldown cycle as quickly as possible just to really abuse what I see as being a more powerful attack. And so I would like it if the attacks were a little more balanced to one another. Some of them, I mean, they all are kind of situational, but some of them are just so much more universal. In addition, while the characters are unique, the art on them is really lacking. I mean, I think that's a really big barrier for this game. I love the theming, I love the feel, but I can't stand the art. I think that they really the art doesn't pop on a lot of characters, and it's not even consistent. I mean, it seems like there were a lot of different artists, and they didn't really all have the same vision.
Right. It feels like early Magic the Gathering, when there were a bunch of different artists, and they just did not
very hit and miss
work together at all.
And mostly miss, in my opinion, on this one.
All right. Well, is there anything else you want to go through?
No, I think we should just talk about our holistic ratings of the game now, sort of pull out of the argument.
All right. If I do, if I were to pull everything together here, I would say, on the whole, this is as I mentioned, a very unique game, a very fun game, and a very replayable game. And it certainly has its flaws, but all in all, I would give, I think, 8 out of 10 in this game. I think it is very solid. I think it does its job very well, and it has a very it does a very good job of replicating the feel of a fighting game, and does so while maintaining a really fun play environment.
Mm-hmm. I would actually, despite the hang-up I have with the art and the sort of over-reliance for certain characters with certain moves, I'm going to go so high as a 8.5 on 10, because I think that it's got really unique stuff. I love combining the bases and the styles. I think that it's very fun to sort of see what combos I can come up with that fit the situation. I wish there weren't so many combos I felt were so good, but that's not a huge issue. And I feel like the luckless thing is really big for me. I mean, I hate losing to luck. I don't really like, we talked about the dice mechanics versus card battle mechanics previously. As you know, that I'm not a huge fan of dice mechanics by comparison. I don't like to leave things to chance once I have my plan in motion. I like to know what I'm getting into, and I feel like that's always the case with this game. I always know exactly what my opponent has at his disposal. I know what I have at my disposal, and I feel like it's almost a very pure battle of wits. Mm-hmm. And I really, really enjoy that about this. So yeah, I would definitely give BattleCON, when it comes out, a strong recommendation, and thank Mr. Talton for sending us a review copy.
Absolutely.
If you are interested in sending us a review copy of your game, you can do so. The information will be below in the link. So next, we're going to be talking about the chit chat.
Yeah, we're going to do theming.
Theming, that's right. So we'll see you soon for that.